Get ready to embark on an engineering adventure with Portworx Food Services. This session is unlike any other you've experienced. Instead of a typical presentation, you'll witness our Portworx technical marketing engineers in action as they immerse themselves in the world of platform engineering. Together, we'll experience challenges faced by our fictional company, Portworx Food Services, as they tackle a set of real-world obstacles and take on a new project. While you're watching this session, see how many of these scenarios seem familiar to you from your own experiences. Now we join our engineers from Portworx Food Services who are enjoying a typical workday at the office.
Project Picnic Basket? Who comes up with these project names? Oh, hey, look. It looks like my new hire is joining one of our meetings.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Justin. I'm your new platform engineer that just joined this week.
Hey, Justin. It's nice to meet you. Really thankful that you're here, and I've got some help on the platform engineering team now. I see you got your Portworx barbecue sweatshirt, so you must have already gone through orientation and...
Yeah, thank you for that. I love the sweatshirt. Always, getting swag as part of a new hire training is the best part, I guess.
Well, welcome to the team. Really glad to have you. We might have our boss join this call in a little bit just to say hi. But in the meantime, why don't we get started and you can learn a little bit about our application architecture and what we're responsible for.
Sounds good.
Okay then, so if it makes sense, I'm just going to walk through our application architecture. This is our Portworx barbecue application that we're primarily responsible for. I'll walk through the architecture and then I'll walk through the actual application as well so you can see how it's actually used. I'm sure you've been to one of our barbecue restaurants in the past, but we'll just walk through this here so we make sure you're all on the same page. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm excited.
So here's our basic architecture. At the highest level, the PXBBQ application has a web and app front end for users to interact with, and we store any of our persistent data in a MongoDB database. This database stores everything from login credentials to customer order history and as well as our menu. It's pretty simple and straightforward, I think. Now, we currently run our production version of PXBBQ on Amazon Web Services as a container. We deploy EKS clusters across availability zones so we prevent outages to a single data center. And our front-end application uses a horizontal pod autoscaler to dynamically scale out our application during periods of high activity. And then, of course, it scales down when we no longer need the extra pods to handle the load. The database is housed by a managed database service in AWS called AWS Document DB, which is MongoDB compatible. We have a primary instance, and we also have some replicas to help with read performance and for availability purposes. If you launch our website, you'll get our home screen. The site has our menu items on it, and it's also got some information for our loyalty members. Our users, before they can order anything, will first need to register with a login before they can put their first order in. So I'm adding my info and adding a password here. Once registered, any of our users can then go ahead and start adding their orders. So they'll add an order with a main dish, a couple of sides, and a drink. I'm going to choose brisket for my main dish, cornbread, fried pickles, and of course I'll choose the pork special. And then I'll place my order. And once your order is placed, your order number shows up on the screen. You can either click this order number or you can look at your order history from the menu and it'll show you all your previous orders. So that's our main production app, Portworx Barbecue. Hopefully the application architecture and everything makes sense. What do you think?
No, I think it made sense. Thank you for explaining that to me. I just have one question. What's the pork special?
The pork special is a pretty closely guarded secret, sort of like Willy Wonka's everlasting Godstopper. And since I just met you today, I don't think it's appropriate for me to share those details with you. But maybe as you work here a little longer, you'll get to know.
Hey guys. Devin, I see you've met Justin. Hope you guys are getting along just fine already. So, I've been reviewing our cloud storage costs, and I really need something from you guys because I've been looking at these costs and reviewing them with the finance department, and they're telling me that it's coming from something like managed databases in the public cloud that we're using. I don't know, but these costs are out of control. So, I need you guys to do something for me and quick. I need you guys to figure out how we can reduce these cloud storage costs, okay? And by the way, as a result of this, we might be moving off of this public cloud because of these overages. So anyway, I'm sure you guys can figure something out. I think this is a great opportunity for us to bring some of our stuff back on premises and repatriate. Repatriate. That's it. Some of our infrastructure back into our data centers. And do you remember that project that I had to cancel a couple months ago? We do still have some credits with that other public cloud vendor that I would love for you guys to figure out how we could use. So, I think you guys are brilliant. There's 2 of you now. I mean, how hard can this be, right? But anyway, I gotta run. I have that trip to Hawaii that I'm taking for a few days, where I'm going to go to the seminar on restaurant point-of-sale devices. And hopefully, these babies keep the orbs nice and safe like they always have, and I still look good in them. But anyway, I gotta run. Why don't you guys figure something out? I'll talk to you next week when I'm back, and have a great week, guys. See ya.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got our first challenge together. We need to figure out a way to get off of our managed databases so that we can reduce our costs. You got any ideas, Justin?
I think I've heard people have gotten used to running data on Kubernetes or running databases on Kubernetes. I know I've heard about it on the Kubernetes Bytes podcast, and then also on the Data on Kubernetes Day that they do at KubeCon. So I think that can be a good start for us to at least start experimenting.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. I've heard about running data on Kubernetes before, but never done it myself personally. Maybe I'll have to check out that podcast, Kubernetes Bytes. Let's do some investigations, and then how about we come back tomorrow and put our heads together and review what we found.
Yeah, that does. That sounds like a plan of action.
Faced with the challenge of replatforming the Portworx barbecue app to run on containerized infrastructure, our talented team of engineers waste no time in brainstorming and testing out solutions. With fierce determination, they spend the next day in the lab, putting their skills to the test. Along the way, they discover some innovative strategies that work like a charm, while also discovering some major roadblocks that challenge their expertise. But they ultimately emerge triumphant, armed with a newfound understanding of the power of containerization. Let's catch up with our engineers in the aftermath of their epic testing journey and discover the insights they've uncovered along the way.
Hey Justin, I did some looking last night, and I think your idea of putting data on Kubernetes has some merit. I ran into a few challenges though, and I wanted to review those with you before we get too far into this. Hope that's okay. The first challenge I ran into was how do we make our data available across availability zones? Our Kubernetes clusters are stretched across AZs, but the EBS storage that you get from Amazon resides in a single availability zone. If that AZ goes offline, then so does our data. We need a way for our data to be stretched across AZs to prevent an outage. So my primary concern at the moment is figuring out how to solve this availability issue, but I'm also concerned with a few other items. Next on my list was portability. I'm not sure how we can move our data to a different environment if we need to, if our data is in EBS. This extends to disaster recovery as well. How can we replicate our data to a second site in case of the unthinkable? I don't think we'd be able to use EBS snapshots in another cloud, and even if we replicate them to another AWS region, this sounds like a pretty manual task to complete. I also am not thrilled with some of the capacity management capabilities. EBS volumes are not thin provisioned, so we're going to be spending a little bit more money on them, and we would probably have to be the people manually resizing disks when they run out of disk space. I don't know about you, but I don't want to take the phone call in the middle of the night just because we ran out of disk space.
No, I'll follow your lead. I don't want to wake up 2 a.m. in the morning too. So yeah, let's find a solution.
The other items on the list are a little less concerning to me. We'll need a way to figure out how to manage our IOPS on GP3 disks. I'm not sure if we even know how many IOPS are needed for each of our environments. And lastly, we need to ensure everything is encrypted, which it looks like EBS can work for us there, so not a big deal. I just don't know how to solve some of the other problems without a load of work.
I think as part of the research that we did yesterday, right, I also looked at the Data on Kubernetes Day from KubeCon Chicago, and I found an interesting session. I think that guy's name is Chris. He works for Portworx, and I know looking at their website, they seem to have been around for a while, and they call themselves the leaders in Kubernetes storage and data management. So what I did was I tried to take initiative and then met with him yesterday, and I've tried scheduled a meeting with him today. Does that sound good? Should we call him, bring him in?
Justin, I think that's great. I love that you're taking an initiative already to get things done. I'd love to hear how some of these vendors are solving problems for customers. Let's bring them in. Thank you.
Devin, this is Chris, the Portworx cloud native architect that I spoke to you about. So yeah, let's talk about Portworx and learn more about it.
Good morning, everyone.
Chris, really nice to meet you. I'm hoping you can help us solve some problems with running data on Kubernetes.
You bet. Would you like me to get started?
Please, I'm interested to hear what Portworx is all about.
Today, I'm going to give an overview of Portworx data services. Portworx as a platform has a number of features to enable data services inside of a Kubernetes and other container orchestration environments. Portworx will run on any Kubernetes distribution, on any storage system, on any cloud for the purposes of supporting any application. In that sense, it is truly software defined. And as a set of storage services, it provides, of course, storage services, provisioning, day two operations, and DevOps services for self-provisioning for developers, in addition to backup services, business continuity and disaster recovery services, and database services, where we will provision hardened, secure, curated database services for a Kubernetes platform that are supported by Portworx. Let's take a look at a few of these offerings. Portworx works by providing a resiliency factor for our applications across Kubernetes nodes. So as an application writes data, we have a configurable parameter to set a resiliency factor so that that data is copied to another node or a third node. This enables us, in the event of a failure, to have our pod immediately restart on another node without having to shift the backend storage. This means that we can provide resiliency between availability zones in the case of cloud providers. Because Portworx is topology aware, it will ensure that the data is spread between availability zones, provided our Kubernetes cluster is configured to be between multiple availability zones. This same configuration can be used for rack availability inside of a data center.
Chris, just interrupting, wanted to let you know that you're already off to a great start. This was a major hurdle that we were trying to overcome, and it sounds like right out of the gate, Portworx is going to be able to help us. So just wanted to tell you you're on a great start. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. I'll let you continue.
We are also able to do replication, snapshots, and a number of storage services because of the layer we sit at. We're able to take all of the Kubernetes objects and replicate them from one cluster to another cluster in an asynchronous manner. This enables both migration and disaster recovery in the event that my first cluster has a failure. And because I'm capturing all of the Kubernetes objects, I'm able to recover quickly in the event of a failure without having to piece anything back together. I also mentioned a couple of other services that Portworx offers. One is backup. This software-defined backup system is a Kubernetes native way of backing up both the objects and manifests, as well as the data inside of these applications in an application-aware manner. And because it's software-defined, we can send these backups to any storage that you have, whether that's an object store or even NFS-based storage. It's important to back up Kubernetes applications in a native way in order to ensure that they can be restored properly in the same cluster in the event of a localized failure, or in a different cluster if necessary, sometimes even for the purposes of migration. Lastly, built on top of Portworx Enterprise is Portworx Data Services, which provides curated database images that are security hardened and curated for developers and database administrators to both provision and use PDS to handle day 2 operations, such as scaling, backup, recovery, and other similar functions. Let me walk you through a few demos to show off our capabilities. Today I'm going to demo synchronous DR for you. I have 2 clusters that are running my application, which is a pet clinic, and we can see when I interrogate the underlying storage cluster that it is spanned between both clusters. So when I run that pxcuttle status, I see nodes from both controllers. So let's take a look at our application. We have a list of veterinarians and owners. Looks like Jeff Black is there. Let's take a look at the cluster pairing. Stork is a storage orchestrator that is managing the pairing between these 2 clusters. So even though the underlying storage system is the same cluster, which is how we're achieving synchronous replication, we need to ensure that the objects, all of the manifests, are actually available on cluster 2 in the event of a failover. We're actually going to simulate this failover by first suspending the application replication, and then scaling it down. At this point, the application is no longer available on cluster 1 and is still about to come up on cluster 2. But as the storage is synchronous, we have lost no transactions. And we can indeed see that it's not in sync. Now we're going to activate the application on cluster 2. This is reading the annotations that are part of this manifest so that Stork knows the replica counts and which deployments to start. We'll give this a moment to come up. Okay, looks like our destination cluster is up, and we can indeed see that cluster 1 is no longer hosting Pet Clinic. Let's go ahead and connect to cluster 2. And we can see that our application is now running on cluster 2, and all of our data is there. Let me show you one more demo on how to avoid running out of capacity with your persistent volumes. Now I'm going to show you Autopilot in action. Imagine that we have a health processing platform. This application is designed to ingest a lot of patient data, and is going to be using both file storage as well as a Postgres database. We can see that we have 2 PVCs available for this application, each 1 gig in size. Let's go ahead and start registering patients. We notice our disks filling up, and then we actually encounter a write error because the disks are full. Autopilot is going to mitigate this situation. Let's take a look at the autopilot rule. Autopilot can grow a PVC by a certain percentage. In this case, we're going to grow the PVC by 100% when a condition is hit, up to a maximum size. Let's register patients again and see how this situation changes. Notice my capacity is still 1 gig on both PVCs. In addition to what we're seeing here, Autopilot also has the ability to grow the backend storage to avoid us running out of space within a storage pool. And we can now see that Autopilot is increasing the size of these PVCs. And we have just avoided a storage capacity related outage. If you're interested in trying out our software in your own lab, try these links, which will give you some trial licenses to get you started.
This is great. Justin, let's get together this week to figure this stuff out before the boss gets back from his vacation.
Vacation? I didn't know he was on vacation.
Yeah, sorry, work trip to Hawaii, I guess is what I meant to say.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
After a fantastic meeting with the Portworx Cloud Native architect, our engineers have gained a whole new perspective on how to solve the complex issues plaguing their stateful application. Armed with free trial licenses, they waste no time deploying Portworx in their labs. With bated breath, they explore the possibilities and put the platform to the test, determined to see if it could finally mitigate the persistent storage problems that were preventing them from moving away from their document database managed service. And now we catch up with our intrepid engineers just in time to see if Portworx actually lived up to its promise.
Justin, we made really good progress in the lab this week, I think. We got the Portworx barbecue application up and running in Kubernetes using MongoDB databases in our Kubernetes cluster. We tested disaster recovery, we tested auto scaling, we tested fixing noisy neighbor problems. I think we're in really good shape with our performance benchmarks and everything. I can't wait to show this to the boss when he gets back from his work trip.
Yeah, no, I think like I had a good experience just trying things out by deploying like a simple Postgres and a Cassandra cluster on Kubernetes. But then I was thinking about how we can provide those golden paths to our developers, right? And figure out how we can establish a unified set of APIs or a single API for them to use, similar to how they're using the cloud databases today. And I think there are too many operators for each individual database engine. Like Postgres has 5, Kafka has 3. So like a lot of databases and operators that we might have to manage. That's my only challenge right now. Like we need to figure out a way on how we can solve or make things easy for us and our end users.
Hey guys, look who's back from Hawaii. Hey, I hope things are really going well on that cloud cost reduction task that I asked you to get on last week before I left. You know, it really is our number one priority to get that cost optimized and this nailed down this quarter. So our other number one priority is going to be helping the development team spool up on getting our new project deployed, Project Picnic Basket.
Hey, are you the one who came up with that project name?
Well, yeah, of course I came up with the name. I mean, don't you love it?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I always look forward to hearing what the new project names are going to be when they come out.
So, I really want you to help Justin kind of get familiar with this and spooled up on this because we really need to optimize costs just like we have for the barbecue application.
Yeah, now that you mention it, we made great progress this week, and we're really excited to show you with what we've come up with.
Can we do it another time? I mean, I'm late for a business lunch at Nakamura Ramen, which is, as you know, the best ramen place in New York City. I mean, the tonkatsu is amazing. And anyway, why don't you go ahead and get things prepped, be prepared to give me a status update first thing Monday morning, and we'll talk then. Okay? I gotta go, though. See you later.
So what is Project Picnic Basket?
Yeah, since our barbecue restaurants have been so successful, we started branching out into some other areas. If you're familiar with companies like Zingerman's or Goldbelly, they'll ship food to you from across the country for restaurants that you can't get in your local region. And we're doing the same sort of thing as well with a new application that we have called PX Delivery, where you can order Portworx barbecue and a few other options and have them shipped to you across the country. So let me show you the app architecture and details about our PX Delivery application. PX Delivery is a bit more complex than our barbecue application. We still have a web front end for people to order through, and we're still using MongoDB to handle our user logins and profiles. The difference is when customers order through the PX Delivery app, the orders are pushed into a Kafka queue for processing. Internally, we pull the data from this Kafka queue and push the order data into a MySQL database to show order history from our application. We have additional Kafka consumers that pull those orders out of Kafka and push them to whichever restaurant the customer ordered them from. So they can prepare the order for shipping, and we can also schedule a truck to pick up the items at a certain date. I think our trick with PX Delivery is going to be, how do we handle all these databases at scale using data on Kubernetes?
Yeah, because even looking at the operators, right, like there were options like something had security or encryption at rest, something didn't. There were role-based access control rules in some, or some clusters were highly available. So I think we need to find a solution. And I don't know, Devin, if you remember, but I remember seeing something on the slide that Chris shared about data services. Why don't we call him back and see if they have a solution for us?
Yeah, that would be great. Would you call Chris and I'm going to grab some coffee and I'll be right back for the meeting.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back. What can I help you with today?
Hey Chris, so as I mentioned on the phone call, right, we are all in or trying to get all into running data on Kubernetes or databases on Kubernetes, but there are still a few challenges that we feel need to be resolved. I think we find the options that are available for us from an operator perspective as overwhelming. And I remember seeing something in your initial presentation around data services. So can you help us like figure out if there's like a single way to do things, or if we can build these golden parts for our developers, if we want to run databases on Kubernetes?
Oh, no problem. Let me take a minute to share my screen and show you a demo of our Portworx Data Services solution, which is a way to run managed databases on Kubernetes. Now I'm going to show you how to deploy a Microsoft SQL Server using Portworx Data Services. Once I select my data service, I can select the version of Microsoft SQL that I want to deploy. Give it a name, and select the target cluster and namespace. Now keep in mind this namespace is controlled with a label. I also have the option of provisioning a load balancer, which allows this installation to be accessed from outside the Kubernetes cluster. I have options for application configurations, as well as resource settings that can be controlled by the administrator. I can also specify storage configurations, such as the number of replicas, and a policy for how those are treated, along with backups and the backup target locations. Let's go ahead and deploy this cluster. This is deploying on my target Kubernetes cluster. Now that Microsoft SQL is deployed, I can connect to it. Portworx Data Services automatically manages a username and password for this configuration, and I can copy the endpoint, which is what I use to connect into this Microsoft SQL instance. I enter in the supplied username and password. And I'm able to successfully connect and manage this just like any other Microsoft SQL server. Portworx Data Services provides a framework to manage both the provisioning of Microsoft SQL Server as well as other data services, as well as handling day two operations such as backups, cloning, and scaling.
This is really fantastic. This is really going to help us with managing multiple different types of databases in a familiar way across environments. And I think this is going to be a real problem solver for us. So thank you. Can we get some trial licenses so we can proof of concept this thing and get it ready to go for our boss?
Sure, no problem at all. I'll send you some info on PDS via email so you can try it out.
Great. Justin, let's sync up offline about how we can build a demo for the boss when he gets back.
After countless hours of research, experimentation, and trial and error, our engineers have finally found the key to lowering costs and reducing operational burdens for the entire company. But this is only the beginning. With a laser focus on giving developers a frictionless method of deploying their applications, our engineers have been working tirelessly to refine their approach and fine-tune their solutions. And now, after days of hard work, they're finally ready. With a plan in place that's sure to impress even the toughest of critics, our engineers are poised to collect their well-deserved kudos. Will they be able to impress their boss? Let's join our engineers one last time as they prepare to show off their demo.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late, but I'm here now. So why don't you go ahead and show me what you've got?
Over the past couple of weeks, we've been re-architecting the Portworx barbecue application to move off of a managed database and into databases that are run inside of Kubernetes, giving us more flexibility to move our applications around between environments and lowering our costs. We're also using Portworx data services to help us with managed databases so that we can provision them in a consistent manner across all of those environments and make it easier for the platform engineers to actually manage all these different instances that we've got for developers. Let me show you what we've got. We're using Portworx data services as a new solution to manage our databases in Kubernetes. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the PDS UI. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we're calling the API through a script that we've written. The script is going to deploy the 3 data services that are needed for PX delivery to run. And as the script fires and begins deploying our data services, you can see in the PDS UI that new services are starting to show up. These are the MongoDB, Kafka, and MySQL instances needed for our app. Once the databases are deployed and ready, we also output their connection information for the purposes of this demo. These connection strings are used by the delivery app to connect to the data services. In this case, our script is actually creating secrets. And then when we deploy PX Delivery will mount those secrets so that it knows its connection information for those 3 different data services. Then we can deploy the PX Delivery app to Kubernetes through our usual process, which is through a Helm deployment. Once PX Delivery is deployed, we can check for the service name to access the application. Now here on the left-hand side of the screen, I've pulled up our application that's running in Kubernetes. And on the right-hand side of our screen, I'm running a logs command on both the PX Delivery application as well as the PX Consumer, which is pulling data from the Kafka queue and pushing it into MySQL. So we'll run a logs on both of those so we can see what's happening when we interact with our application. So now let's register a new user and watch the logs as this happens. I'm adding in a new delivery user to the application, and of course I'm putting in an address where we can deliver their orders once they have placed an order. We can see in the logs that the data for registering the user is now being added to our MongoDB instance. So we're sure that our connection to our MongoDB instance is working correctly. Now let's go ahead and start an order now that we've registered someone. So we'll go to our orders page and we'll select one of our restaurants. I'll choose PXBBQ as the restaurant for this. And we'll go ahead and put in a typical order from their menu. When you place the order, you can see in the logs that we write the data to Kafka in the PX Delivery pod. And also in the consumer pod, we were able to pick up that order and push it to MySQL. When we review the order from our app, the order data is actually pulled from the MySQL database, and you can see that's working. To sum up, we can now run all of our databases inside of Kubernetes and reducing our managed database spend. By moving all of our workloads to Kubernetes, our application is now deployed the same way no matter what cloud it's deployed to. We no longer need to learn how to use different managed services across clouds, even if they're all providing the same MongoDB or one of our other databases. Anywhere we have block storage, we can deploy our apps with Portworx. And thanks to PDS, we can keep a managed database experience while running our persistent data in Kubernetes. And now that we deploy to any environment, we can consider moving some workloads on-prem or move our apps to the individual restaurants at the edge if we want to. Architecture not only saved us money, but it made us more agile in the process.
Guys, this is great work. I mean, it's... Can you hold on a second? Murley's calling. I've got to talk to him about this. Hey, Murley. Yeah, no, I'm really glad you called. Yeah, no, I solved the cloud cost issue, and I've got a deployment solution ready to go for Project Picnic Basket. Yeah, no, we can discuss this at our offsite later this week, but I really think you're going to be pretty impressed with my work here.
Well, Devin, I think we did a good job, right? Like, I'm still new, so I'll take that as a win. The boss seemed happy. The demo worked with 2 of our apps. I just have one question remaining. What's the port special?
Okay. You performed admirably in your first couple of weeks of work here at PXBBQ. I'll introduce you to Sarvesh, our research and development chef, and he can tell you what exactly is in the pork special.